boulevard, which goes all the way in the south, when it hits Bronx Park and Fordham University, the houses disappear and people couldn't find where they were. So they petitioned the city council to change the name of this section of Southern Boulevard to a more snooty-sounding Bedford Park Boulevard, and so that's how it got its name. Now, the Grand Concourse itself was the idea of an immigrant from Alsace-Lorraine named Louis A. Rissy, who was a civil engineer. He was obviously very polite because that's why he was a civil engineer. He saw this big ridge over here and he said that is a great place for a highway. Now you have to remember, at the time that he came here in the last quarter of the 19th century, this was all farmland. And he wants to have a huge boulevard in the middle of nowhere. But he was able to persuade the powers that be to do that. In the 1890s, he began to draw up the plan, and in 1909, this was completed. 182 feet across. It is modeled after the Champs-Élysées in Paris, tree-lined, and at the time, people said, you know, what are you building this huge boulevard in the middle of nowhere? He said, in the future, this place is going to be very crowded with people and you will need a wide boulevard to carry the traffic. And he was absolutely right. One of the innovations that he had was right here behind you. You see this, this underpass. That is his idea. Now, the original place where you would find underpasses was in Central Park, and in the building of Central Park, you know, the roadways in there do have underpasses, but it was never tried on city streets before, and this is the Grand Concourse is the very first urban street to have underpasses under the major intersections. The idea is that the traffic at these major intersections would be so great that you would need to separate the grade for the traffic so the east-west traffic would not interfere with the north-south traffic. This is the beginning for the idea of what we today have as the cloverleaf on major highways. So from this, the cloverleaf was adapted. So this is where it all started, on the Grand Concourse. Now, we have here the street over here that just crosses it, a very small street called Villa Avenue. Now, it got its name from the Jerome Park Villa Site Company, which built up this area. In the 1890s, on the other side of the elevated line that you see there, there is a few blocks down the Jerome Park Reservoir. The Jerome Park Reservoir was built largely with immigrant Italian labor. And the laborers kept coming up here. It took several years in which to build. They had to find a place to live, and so they lived right over here at Villa Avenue. And for many years, that was a very heavily Italian street. Now there are more Hispanics that have come into that area, but it still has a slight Italian cast on it. And you will see one of the hallmarks of the Italian residents of this area when we move in the first stop. Now, the elevated line itself is really a subway and elbways. And once that subway was put in, and this came up about 1917, you began to get apartment houses and other buildings coming up. And this is one of the reasons why most of the apartment houses in this area were built in the 1920s, and you can see them in the 1920s style. In 1933, underneath the Grand Concourse, the D, as in David train, was built as part of the 6th and 8th Avenue subways, and that spurred another building boom, and that apartment house directly across from us in the Art Deco style, which was very popular in the 1930s, was built because the subway came here. And if you see straight down there, there's another cream-colored building that is also in the Art Deco style, again because of the influence of the subway in the 1930s. In fact, the Grand Concourse has the largest collection of Art Deco style buildings in the world. In the world. Okay, so now we're going to go up the Grand Concourse, buck the wind, and go over to about 202nd Street and show you where some of the influence of the Italians can be found.
Lloyd, I just came from an Art Deco tour of South Beach.
Okay. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, this is St. Philip Neri's church. And as you see, it is a church that is made out of stone. It was built in 1899 by those immigrant Italians. The stones themselves were quarried from the Jerome Park Reservoir when it was the Italian laborers were doing the work in building the reservoir. As they were blasting the boulders, they took those boulders and they rolled them up here, and they built this church from the and fashioned the facade from the boulders of the Jerome Park Reservoir excavation. Now, the Italians dominated this area for the first few years, but very quickly the neighborhood began to be filled with Irish. Why? Because the New York Botanical Garden was under construction, and Irish laborers came up to help build the Botanical Garden, and they immediately outnumbered the Italians and took over the control of the church, which immediately sort of put the Italians off a bit. The Irish are still very important here, but starting in the late 1980s, a significant number of Mexicans started coming in to this neighborhood, and now Mexicans have joined the congregation, so you have a mixed congregation of different ethnic groups. And if you notice on the mass schedule there, on Sunday at 7:30, at 9 o'clock, they have Spanish mass, Spanish language mass. So you and in 1899, this church celebrated its 100th, in 1999 it celebrated its 100th anniversary. But the just before that, unfortunately, a fire broke out, and the entire interior of the church was destroyed. The exterior remained, but the entire neighborhood got together. All ethnic groups and all religions contributed to the rebuilding of the interior of the church, and so that it was here at the time of the celebration of its 100th anniversary.
Rebuilt as it was before the fire?
As far as they could possibly do it, yes. By the way, you notice one of the unusual things that you'll see, the bell tower up there is really a pierced bell tower. All you have up there is the facade and the 3 bells. There's nothing behind them. There's nothing behind those bells. Okay?
Fordham Nice? Do they still
Yes, the type of rock, by the way, is called Fordham Nice, G-N-E-I-S-S.
Do they still celebrate? They don't celebrate the Feast on Villa anymore, Villa Avenue, the Italian?
I don't know. You have to ask.
So Lloyd, next we're going to Bedford Park.
Presbyterian Church. That's on Bedford Park Boulevard and Bainbridge.
So I'm
that's
gonna
right
go
down.
left down Bedford Park and
Yeah.
then a left on Bainbridge.
Yeah, you could do that.
Okay.
If you can find a place to park.
Okay. And when you're done doing your thing there, then I'll have you give a little synopsis of that one.
Good enough.
Is that okay?
Fine.
Okay, because I don't want to interrupt them.
That's as I said, it's that's good enough. Like the Russian opera. Okay, now we're going to cross the Grand Concourse, so be very careful. Okay. Without the permission of the parents.
Lloyd, I'm going to let you explain what this is first, and then right
Okay.
before, because I think that's easier for you. You don't want to have to say it twice, right?
Okay, whatever you want to do.
Unless you want me to film you and hold my mic here. So.
Well, let's yeah, I don't care. I can hold 2 mics. It's,
All right.
yeah, I'm strong. I'm a strong fellow. I have.
All right, then I might just kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and I'll hold my mic here too. Is that
Okay, good enough. Good enough.
I'm gonna put you as the woman. I'll put you as, oh, no, wait. Here you go.
They saved it.
Yeah.
Hello? All right, so I can put your son on the television? All right, thank you.
Okay, you got the okay?
All right, let me do what I'm doing, and I'll get you before I leave.
Okay.
This kid's a real...
Well, that's fine. Well, listen.
Experience.
If interest is interest,
That's what it is.
Okay.
Hear it, Lloyd.
Okay.
Who's in the spotlight?
Okay. Okay,
You
thank
want to
you.
hold it too?
Yeah, I can hold it too, yeah. Okay. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are standing here now in front of the Bedford Park Presbyterian Church. The Bedford Park Presbyterian Church was built about 1900. The architect was a fellow by the name of Robert H. Robertson. The interesting thing about this is that you'll notice that here the facade is also made out of stone, but it comes from the same place that the stone of the St. Philip Neri's church came from. Both churches were built about the same time that the reservoir was under construction, and they said, well, gee, you know, if those Italians are going out building their Catholic church, we can go down and pick up those spare boulders and build our Presbyterian church. And so here it is. And it's a very handsome church indeed. It is in a Tudor style, in a sense, but it also has some elements of modernity. It does have an air of Frank Lloyd Wright about it. There are several windows and entrances that are in round arches. The gables are half timbered, and they contain stained glass and cusped arches. And the entrance is in a square tower, and the square tower is lit by windows, and there's an open belfry on top. That's where the bells are. And there's a hipped roof up there. The addition that's next to it was added in 1929, but as you see, this is like a little country church. Because when it was built, this was like a little country. There were still farms in this area. It was rapidly suburbanizing, becoming like a suburban little village. But this is like a reminder of what the area used to be. Okay?
This is the addition down here.
That's right. That's the addition. That's correct. Okay? What? No, they had to get more space because there was by 1929 this was an urban area.
It's mostly Korean.
Well, as you see, there's English and Korean, and
1899.
Oh, you mean the whole thing?
yeah, that was 1899.
I
Yeah.
know about
Their
that.
anniversary book? 100
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm an
How
altar
nice.
server. I know about
Okay.
You what?
Oh, look, that's next to the gym. Look,
Oh.
those
Yeah.
are like the rooms.
Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, my
Okay, let's see the
We're the
No,
St.
they
Philip
have
Neri's
This is before I got
the
born.
varsity champions for 2006 and
real pretty
2005.
church, isn't it?
Very
Is
good.
that where you go?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's real pretty.
Okay.
champion
But
of
he
what?
doesn't bother to go to church.
Champion of what?
What?
Yeah. Champion of what?
young man?
Champion for basketball. Girls and
Basketball.
boys.
Okay. Well, that's the way the ball bounces, or dribbles, as the case may be.
Yeah, all the lines.
Okay.
Yep, that's the original office.
Alrighty. Okay. Now the.
I just need to know where you guys are going.
Okay. Actually, up one block.
Oh boy. Isn't that green stuff on
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
the ridges?
Yeah. Right.
Where those people?
The roof, the peak of the roof. Oh. First and then go that one.
Yeah.
That's
I
interesting.
don't think I've ever been down this.
That is very interesting. That's the Albanian flag.
Holy shit.
Well, sure. Yeah, good old Al. I know him well. The. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I want to point to you the house across the street right there on the corner. Very simple house. Doesn't look very good, but that is the house where Dr. Theodore Kazimiroff lived. Now, does that ring a bell with anybody? Okay. Now, if you go to the Botanical Garden, the street right in front of the Botanical Garden is Dr. Theodore Kazimiroff Boulevard. If you go to Pelham Bay Park, there's a Theodore Kazimiroff Nature Trail. Dr. Theodore Kazimiroff was born in the Bronx in 1914. He became a dentist, which of course made him look rather down in the mouth. But this is where he lived, and this is also where he had his office. But he was in many ways a polymath, because he was interested in many different things, not just in dentistry. He taught dentistry at NYU, But he also was interested in horticulture. He was interested in zoology. He was interested in all sorts of natural history as well as local history. He was an archaeologist. He was what I call a ferret. He could stand on a site and without anybody knowing what was there, somehow he would just reach down and pick up in his hand a pile of Indian arrowheads. It was unerring. He could do it that way. A very charismatic person. And in 1955, he became the founder and the first president of the Bronx County Historical Society. Indeed, he was appointed the Bronx Borough historian. He was the second Bronx Borough historian, and I'm the fourth. So he's one of my predecessors in the office of Bronx Borough historian. Okay? Now we'll go right over there. No, that we were talking about that. That's Dr. Theodore Kazimiroff's house. Okay. Okay, but we're going to go over to the church if that's what you want.
Yeah, that's great. I just want to shoot you.
We're on the tour, not her.
Well, you'd be surprised. Okay, let's. Oh, the light's going to change. Light's going to change. What? Okay. Well, of course we could always go there and there. You know, it's. What?
When did he die?
Oh dear. It was. Let me see. It was in the late 70s. I think it was he died. I think it was late 70s he died. Yeah. I'm not sure it was the 80s. I think it was the late 70s. He was a borough president for 4 years before World War I. Okay. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are at the Bedford Park Congregational Church. The Bedford Park Congregational Church was built in 1900. As you see, it was founded in 1889. It's actually a wood frame building. The stone that you see there is not really stone. It's called ashlar. Basically, it's a full stone front. It is concrete behind there, and the stone was simply embedded in the concrete. It's not true stone. It's another country church in the city, as you see. For many, many decades, from the 1960s to the 1990s, the pastor of this church was Reverend William Kalajian, who is still alive. Reverend William Kalajian was at one time the Protestant pastor of the New York City Police Department, and today he is the Protestant chaplain in the Kingsbridge Veterans Hospital, and still very, very active. When the Bronx County Historical Society was founded, it originally met in a library in West Farms, which had the tendency to kick them out, before all the stuff that the Historical Society was doing was finished. So Dr. Kazimiroff, as the president of the Historical Society, was trying to find a place for the society's members to meet and hear lectures and things like that. And right across the street from his house was the Congregational Church with the Congregational Church Hall. And of course he knew Reverend Kalajian, and Reverend Kalajian was a very accommodating person, a very nice guy, still is. And they got together, and for a few decades, the Bronx County Historical Society had its lectures right here in the Bronx, in the Bedford Park Congregational Church Hall, and that is where the society grew and prospered. Okay. Now I know the people at News 12 want me to talk about Dr. Kazimiroff's house, for them, and you got to do it for the general public. So if you just stick around and take a look at it, it's. Well, it's right. That's the address of the Botanical Gardens now.
And it's Kazimiroff.
That's correct.
He was Russian?
Russian descent.
When was he born?
1914 in the Bronx.
What month?
I don't know.
I just wonder his astrological sign.
Oh, I have no idea.
I guess
I'm kidding. When did he pass away?
I'm not sure whether it was the late 70s or early.
1914 in the Bronx. Fine.
He was born in the Bronx in 1914, and he was a dentist by profession. So
this looks like a haunted church.
It is.
I'm gonna just do those other two churches.
Fine.
Yeah, I mean it's not really just a. Where are we going next?
Well, next we're going to see the house of John F. Comden, who was the guy who
Okay. Where am I going?
That would be on, street,
201st Street?
it'd be just south, on Decatur Avenue, just south of 201st Street.
Decatur.
Decatur.
Oh, Decatur.
Yeah.
So I'll go make a right, go straight.
Go straight down. If you get to 201st, you get off. Yeah, that's the story. That's the whole story. Yes. Okay. Okay. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, this brown house behind me is nice, simple house. And architecturally, you can't really say it's distinguished, but it has a distinguished history because of a resident who lived here in the 1930s. The man was an educator by profession, and in his old age, he lived in this house. His name was John F. Condon. Now, that doesn't ring a bell with anybody.
Not the PA announcer.
Not the PA announcer, no. But if I said Lindbergh baby kidnapping case, would that ring a bell? Okay. Well, as you know, Charles Lindbergh was a national hero because in 1927 he had flown the Atlantic without a stop alone. And in the 1930s, now married to Anne Morrow, then Anne Morrow Lindbergh, he had a young son. They lived in seclusion in a town in New Jersey, and then suddenly one day the baby was disappeared. It was kidnapped. John F. Condon, who had been a teacher, a principal, was actually coaching some athletic teams for Fordham University. And he went up onto 188th Street and the Grand Concourse, where there was a Bickford's cafeteria. And while he was there, he heard the news hawkers come around saying that Lindbergh's baby had been kidnapped. He asked for a newspaper and was so appalled at it, he decided that he was going to do something about it. And so he placed a classified ad in the newspaper that he was sure that everybody read. John F. Condon was a Bronx chauvinist. Therefore, he placed his ad in the Bronx Home News, a daily newspaper that was published in the Bronx at the time. Now, he signed it Jaffe, after his initials, John F. Condon, JFC, Jaffe. Now, one evening, a taxi driver comes up to this house, knocks on the door, and said, "Listen, I was stopped on the street at Mosholu Parkway, and I was given this letter to give to you." Condon opens it up, and it is a letter from the person who's purporting to be a kidnapper. So the contact was made. And what Condon did was to get a fellow who he knew was a professional boxer to accompany him to meet the kidnapper at one of the entrances of Woodlawn Cemetery. That led to another meeting that occurred at St. Raymond Cemetery in Throgs Neck. This time he was accompanied by Lindbergh himself. Money was handed over. The kidnapper said, you know, you could find the baby on a boat in New York Harbor. The boat wasn't there. And of course, eventually the body of the baby was found not too far from the home in New Jersey. However, the money was paid for in gold certificates, which went out of circulation with the Roosevelt administration. And suddenly, a guy was caught at a filling station passing one of these gold certificates, and that led eventually to the arrest of Bruno Richard Hauptmann, who lived in the Wakefield area of the Bronx, as the kidnapper. There was a big extradition trial that occurred at the brand new county building at the Grand Concourse and 161st Street, and the kidnapper was extradited. A trial was held in Flemington, New Jersey, international coverage, and of course eventually Bruno Richard Hauptmann was executed. But
I'm sorry, what was the connection with City Island and Hauptmann?
well, I'm coming to that. Okay, but what happened was that Hauptmann, John F. Condon was one of the first witnesses against Hauptmann because he could identify him, and they asked him at the trial, "What is your name?" John F. Condon. "Where do you live?" "The Bronx, the most beautiful borough in the world." John F. Condon, again with his friend the boxer, actually opened up a shop on City Island in his last years. And I understand the structure of the building is still there. Of course, the shop is not there at all. It was like a little bar of some sort. But that is the connection that Condon had with City Island.
I thought Hauptmann had something.
No, Hauptmann didn't have anything with City Island, but he, he obviously had a shop in that area and did work in that area. And of course, the house he lived in is still standing. So he just asked for he just asked for the kidnapper to contact him, and the kidnapper did, and that's how the whole thing started. So the Bronx Home News and John F. Condon are the people who broke the Lindbergh kidnapping case.
What was Bruno doing with the Bronx News for crying out loud?
Well, obviously he lived in the Bronx too. He lived in the Wakefield area of the Bronx.
Would you say, like, so just in terms of definition, I should say that in the 1930s he lived in this house
Right.
when he broke
The Lindbergh kidnapping.
or when he solved
The Lindbergh kidnapping. He helped to solve the Lindbergh kidnapping case. He was the guy who became the intermediary with the kidnapper.
What year was the kidnapping?
It was in the 30s. It was, like the mid-30s. The mid-30s. I don't know the precise date on, right off the top of my head. Maybe it's there if you could look. Excuse me? Yeah, near there. Yes.
What's the exact address here?
The address is 2974 Decatur Avenue. Okay.
Lloyd, do you know where they moved to after the raid? The family moved around here someplace.
I'm not sure. Right off the top of my head. Okay. Now,
Where next?
where next? We're going to the precinct on
I know
Webster
that
Avenue.
precinct.
Yeah. Okay.
What's significant about that?
Oh God, it's old. It's
Just the precinct?
yeah, the precinct itself, and
I covered something there the other day.
Yeah, okay. It's the architecture and what it's there. You can actually the old stables are still there, and the it was there was actually sleeping facilities for the policemen because it was so far in the middle of nowhere. So if the policemen were on duty, they had the opportunity to sleep.
And after there, where are you going?
Well, then we're going on the Parkway itself.
To look at the school and Calvin Klein?
Ladies and gentlemen, we're on Webster Avenue here. In the 1920s, in 1920, the 3rd Avenue elevated was extended from its former stop at the Botanical Gardens, which is just a couple of blocks from here, further northward to Gun Hill Road. And the elevated structure remained here until it closed in 1973. It stopped in Manhattan in '55. It stayed here until 1973, and you can see they celebrate Christmas all year long around here. Noel, Noel, Noel. Right across the street is a playground called Frisch Field. It's named after the Frankie Frisch, who was a Major League Baseball player. For some years, he held the batting record, and for some years, the stolen bases record. And at that time, he actually became a manager. He played for the old New York Giants and also for the St. Louis Cardinals and some other teams as well. Now, you might ask, why is it here? Because Frankie Frisch grew up here. This is his old neighborhood, and he attended Fordham University, and his nickname was the Fordham Flash. So this is Frisch Field, which is named in the honor of Frankie Frisch. Okay? Okay. Hey. There used to be. Yeah. Well, I'm not. This is. I don't know. He didn't get shot. He was shot here. But this is the police. This is where the police precinct is that did it. This is your police precinct.
At 3rd Avenue Well Days, April 29th.
They like build a precinct like
It was an old building that was built. This is an old building.
Was it built originally for a precinct?
That's correct.
Yeah, you can see
Okay,
the
you can see it.
signage. The
Right.
original signage
Right.
is still there.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, as you see across the street, this is the local police precinct station house. This is the 52nd police precinct. However, when it was built, it was the 41st precinct. Just above the seal of the city of New York, above the entrance, you'll see just above the pediment it says there precinct, and it was originally 41 up there. Now it says 52. In 1906, this building was built. The architects were Staunton and Staunton, and that was a local firm. Arthur Staunton was a Bronx man. One of the things he did as a young man was actually preserve Polk Cottage. He was one of those guys who prevented Polk Cottage from being destroyed. But he got he also, by the way, is the architect of the Soldiers and Sailors Monument on Riverside Drive. It is inspired by a Tuscan villa. You see, it's red brick. It's dominated by a tall tower. And it has a clock in there. It's a polychromed terracotta clock. The eaves, as you see, are deeply protruding. You know, they come all the way down past the past the walls themselves. It's a romantic design. There are a number of architects in various different parts of the world who are trying to get something sort of evocative of the national past. Some of the early works that you find about the same time in Finland, they call it the national romantic style there. Well, it's each romantic style is slightly different. Sometimes this is called the city beautiful style, simply because it was a city building and it was supposed to be to show the beauty of the city. Now, unfortunately, there's some cars in the way, but you notice at the base of the clock tower there's an arch, and beyond the arch there is another building that is made out of brick. Those are the stables. Because when the building was, when the building was first built, this area was largely farms, some suburban houses. And the patrolmen in the area had to patrol a huge territory, and the easiest way to patrol was on horseback. And that's how they did it. So far was this precinct house from any settled area in 1906 that in the upper floors, the architects made provision for sleeping quarters for the policemen, because if they were working so late that it was difficult for them to get home a long distance away, they could at least sleep overnight in the precinct house. All right? But there it is, and there it is today. Really an unusual precinct house, and it really is a landmark of the city of New York today. Okay?
100th anniversary.
That's right, the 100th anniversary of the precinct is this year. Right.
What building was here before the school?
It was empty.
No warehouses or?
No, it was empty, absolutely empty. There was nothing there.
Before the school was.
That's right. As a matter of fact, when they built it, they had some trouble because the ground on which the school is built is not solid bedrock. So
There were warehouses.
Yeah.
There were buildings.
Yeah, all right, but it was
Bad shape.
yeah. Well, it was bad shape because of the settling of the land. It was a very unsettling situation.
10 years from now.
Yeah.
When was the school built?
This is only about 5 or 6 years ago. That's all.
Why do you care about the Muslim
Do you know why they changed it from 41 to 52?
More people, so they increased the number of precincts, so that they had more places. They had more people, so they had to get more precincts.
Okay.
Lord knows when you get to Queens, they have something like 100 and something or other, 175 or whatever.
Wow. And we're going to Monte?
We're going to go up here. Part of a much grander scheme of things, a much grander system. It was the idea of an immigrant from Northern Ireland who was Catholic, a fellow by the name of John Mullally. John Mullally came over here, and the city of New York in 1874 annexed the western part of the Bronx, west of the Bronx River. It wasn't until 1895 that they annexed the eastern part. And then in 1898 they took over Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island. So the Bronx was actually part of the city before the rest of the city was. Now, John Mullally said, this is all farmland. It's empty up here. All the land is very cheap. This is a great opportunity for the city to buy land for parks. And not only that, because the parkland has their natural topography, you don't have to spend money landscaping it. Get the land now when it's cheap, and then you can wait until the people come up here. The land values will rise, definitely, but you don't have to worry about paying for the parkland. It's already in place. There was a lot of controversy over that idea. One of the guys who opposed this initially was a guy by the name of Theodore Roosevelt. He said, now wait a second, that's a nutty idea. Build all these parks where nobody is. If you're going to build parks, put them in a place like the Lower East Side, where you have crowded people that could use the parks. But there's a logic to that. But Mullally had his own political wiles. He was able to get the legislature to establish a commission. The state legislature to establish a commission to buy the parklands on behalf of the city of New York. And he got himself chosen as the secretary of that commission. Now, as part of the scheme, in one fell swoop, in the year 1888, the city of New York purchased Van Cortlandt Park, Bronx Park, Pelham Bay Park, Crotona Park, Claremont Park, and St. Mary's Park. And also, the scheme was to take the major parks and connect them with parkways. So at the same time, there was purchased Mosholu Parkway, Pelham Parkway, and Crotona Parkway. And the idea was that you could go from park to park on your bicycle and never leave a park-like setting. Now, originally, Mosholu Parkway had a stream in the middle of it. Mullally's idea was to use that stream, have little wooden footbridges crossing it, little statuary along the way. That went by the wayside. The stream, by the way, went here and then turned south on Webster Avenue, and then about Claremont Parkway went over to what is now Brook Avenue. And so the Brook Avenue actually started from here. That went the way when all the waterways became polluted, and they took the smaller waterways and paved them over. Mosholu Parkway itself wasn't really built and developed until about 1911 or so. And it connects Van Cortlandt Park with Bronx Park. Okay. Now, one of the things that really seared the minds of people in the early 20th century was World War I. The constant carnage of the war was appalling. No one alive had ever experienced anything like that. Consequently, this war to end all wars, this war to save the world for democracy, was considered very important to commemorate, which is the reason why November 11th became celebrated as Armistice Day. It is today Veterans Day. It is also the reason why almost every neighborhood in the Bronx, indeed almost every neighborhood around the country, put up a monument to commemorate the sacrifices of those in World War I. And this is the monument for the Mosholu Parkway area. And as you see, it is a very elaborate statue, and it shows a doughboy over there defending a fallen comrade. But not only that, that doughboy is getting help. Because you see the fallen comrade is also protected on the side by the American eagle, who has his wings outstretched protecting the fallen guy as well. And of course that is put in place, and that is the official monument to World War I for this neighborhood. Now at the time, most of the people in this neighborhood were Irish, and if you look very carefully at the guy with the rifle, is very clear Irish features on it. Okay. Okay. Now, if anybody could read Roman numerals, this is when it was dedicated, and as you see, it's 1925. 1925 is when this was dedicated. Okay, and still every year there are veterans groups that come and lay wreaths at this monument, even to today. Okay.
Why does he look particularly Irish there?
Well, you take a look at the bone structure around the face.
The sculptor was born in Ireland.
Yeah, the sculptor was born in Ireland too. Yeah, yes, the sculptor was from Ireland too, which of course helps. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Now we're gonna go back where we came from. When the Mosholu Parkway was being developed in the 1920s and especially in the 1930s, in the New York population of the Bronx was Jewish, and there were a number of, most of them lived south of Tremont Avenue, but there were a number of Jews that lived in and around Mosholu Parkway, and a remnant of their existence is right over here, where you have a synagogue. And that's and you see that the Star of David is right there at the top over the entrance. That synagogue is now used as a Head Start center. The number of the synagogues that you find all over the Bronx have been readapted to other uses. In the South Bronx, many of them have become churches, and some of them are used for other uses as well. In this case, this is a Head Start center. Okay? Okay, let's go. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this apartment house that you see over here, built in the 1920s, 3191 Rochambeau Avenue. You can see the idea of trying to get elegance, the little rustication on the there that that is supposed to be reminiscent of Florence, the lions that guard the entrance over there, but it's rather an ordinary building. Now, why are we here? Well, it's because in this building lived Mr. and Mrs. Klein. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Klein had a son named Richard, who got interested in in the rag trade, which a number of Jewish people were interested in, and he wanted to get into the designing end, and so Richard changed his name to Calvin. And this is where Calvin Klein grew up. This is Calvin Klein's building. Okay? So you have to say, despite what it looks like, this building has style. Okay?
What was the matter with Richard Klein?
Well, again, that's a that's a design decision. Yeah, you'll see. Yeah, exactly. The idea, of course, is to make the name more acceptable. You'll see how that goes on a little later. Okay. Okay, we're on a street now that's called Van Cortlandt Avenue West, but you notice it's a rather odd street because it's rather curved. And the reason why it is curved is because this started out as an old Indian trail. In 1670, it was widened to become the original Boston Post Road. It led from Boston through the northern part of the Bronx to the King's Bridge, where you could get into northern Manhattan. That would take you down what is now Broadway to what was then New York City at the southern tip of Manhattan Island. Okay? Now, it was on this road that Paul Revere came down with messages from the Committee of Correspondence of Boston to the Committee of Correspondence of New York. It was on this road that a young George Washington, dressed in his Virginia militia uniform, came up in 1775 to get to Boston to take command of the troops, the Continental troops over there for the First Continental Army. It was on this road in 1789 when John Adams, accompanied by the Westchester County Militia, came down this road in his carriage on his way to his inauguration as the first Vice President of the United States. And it was also on this road, just a few months later in 1789, that the newly inaugurated George Washington in October came up this road once again to visit the New England states. His first job, he thought, was to visit all of the states because he's the new President of the United States. So this is the road that he took. And as he's going up this road, President of the United States, George Washington, national hero, on the road going in the opposite way are farmers herding sheep on their way to market in New York, which he notes, by the way, in his diary. But he also notes that there is some prosperity that is returning after the war. The pumpkins is growing in the field. This is October. But the land is terribly stony, he said. Terribly stony. Okay. Gary Marshall, 2 R's in Gary, who is today a Hollywood producer and director. Also graduating from this school, it was his sister, Penny Marshall, who is not only an actress, but also a director. Graduating from this school was Calvin Klein, and separated by 4 years in their class was also Ralph Lauren.
And Richard graduated from
Okay, so he's not quite the graduate. So we have another star.
There must have been somebody intelligent graduating.
Yeah. So this is a school of great distinction. As I said, it's the school the stars fell on. Okay, and that's how they like to refer to themselves as well. Okay, so in any event, that's we go here. We now go a little further, and we're going to go up Steuben Avenue. Okay, don't walk on the glass.
Could you just name the 4 people that went there?
There's Robert Klein. Wait. Yeah, it's Robert Klein, Gary Marshall, Penny Marshall, Calvin Klein, and Ralph Lauren.
Had Carl Reiner and family moved out by that time?
No. Carl Reiner actually graduated from Evander Charles High School.
But his son, they lived.
His son lived in the area and went to school in the old Sholem Aleichem houses on Sedgwick Avenue. Rob Reiner. Yeah, Rob Reiner was born in the Bronx. And he went to the Sholem Aleichem houses, and he went to school there. And that had a reputation. Those schools, it was a private school, was extremely leftist in orientation, which sort of explains his politics today. Okay.
You saw that Museum of City New York has thing on that.
The cooperative houses. Yeah, I helped them in on that a bit. Yeah.
One of the classrooms had busts of Lenin.
Oh yeah, sure. It was hilarious. When the Coops was the most radical. That's on the Bronx Park East and Allerton Avenue. They had kids every May Day who got dressed up in uniform with red bandanas, and the band and the school would march out and go to the local Allerton Avenue station, with their fists raised, with the clenched fist, going down for the May Day rally down on Union Square.
What was that cooperative again?
It was called the Coops, which is co-ops without the hyphen. The Coops.
That's the one that has a hammer and sickle.
That's right. Yeah.
Stone set in the building.
Yes. Yeah, you can actually see it over one of the entrances to one of the buildings. Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the vicinity of Yankee Stadium, and I now live just south of Van Cortlandt Park. Okay. So my life is about half and half that area, half this area.
You're near the Amalgamated.
Yeah. I roll out of bed and I hit the wall of the Amalgamated. Now, where is she? She's over there. She left her house. Again, built in the 1920s. This particular apartment house, if you notice, there's a little attached columns on either side made out of brick, with sort of leaves on the top, sort of evoking the original Greek, which is not at all Greek, and some iron decoration on the windows, but again, not a particularly distinguished house. Now, why are we here? Well, this is the house where the Lifshitz family lived. Now, the Lifshitz family had a number of sons. One of them was a fellow by the name of Ralph Lifshitz, and he also, because of circumstances, got involved in the clothing industry, in the rag trade, and he also became a designer. But if he's going to design clothes, can you imagine going into a classy shop asking for an original Lifshitz? So he changed his name to Ralph Lauren. And so this is where Ralph Lauren grew up. Okay? I can't tell you where he played polo, but all right.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Is Klein and Lauren are they gay?
I don't. Ralph Lauren is not. That I knew. No. It's always been a question about Calvin Klein. But I can't tell you. I'm not privy to their bedrooms.
Tony Curtis grew up in the Bronx?
Yes, Bernie Schwartz.
Right. But not in this area?
No, in the Hunts Point area.
Oh, okay.
And
Would you be talking about the synagogue?
well, I'm just mentioning that it's there. It's
Is it still operable?
well, I see lights on in there.
Because I was when Nestor Daniel took us
Yeah.
for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
He said it was the last operable one in the area.
In the area, yes. Yeah. And that's just about it. Right? We're pretty much on schedule. Okay. You notice again the Jewish presence. The Young Israel of Mosholu Parkway. The Young Israel Mosholu Parkway is still in operation today. As you see, it's comparatively new. The building dates, roughly from the 1950s, 60s. But that's just about the last operative synagogue in this neighborhood today. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Where was the? I understand the Mosholu Jewish Center closed a few years ago.
That's correct.
Where was that located?
Oh, that's all the way over that way. Hull Avenue, I believe.
Oh, Hull going towards Webster.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
That was, I think, the last conservative or something.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right, now, ladies and gentlemen, we're at a very important place in the Bronx. First, the newer buildings that you see over there, that's the North Central Bronx Hospital. The North Central Bronx Hospital was built in 1976 to replace the Fordham Hospital that was on Fordham Road, diagonally across the street from the Bronx Zoo near the Fordham University campus. And that's a city hospital. Over here is the whole huge campus of Montefiore Hospital. And the original building of Montefiore is straight in front of us with the green cupola up on top. Now, Montefiore Hospital actually started downtown in Manhattan under Jewish auspices. It was, if I can get this apart. There we go. Just want to get these details. When it comes to Manhattan, I don't know as much. In 1884, it was founded by a group of Jewish philanthropists, and it was named after a British humanitarian, Sir Moses Montefiore, who had been born in Italy and had moved to England, made a fortune there, and then spent his money on various kinds of philanthropies. It began as a tuberculosis sanatorium. Tuberculosis, of course, was a major disease at the time that ravaged people. And in the early 20th century, the neighborhood that was in began to be growing to such a great extent that the people involved figured that the air was going to get polluted, and this is no place for a tuberculosis sanatorium. And on the suggestion of Jacob Schiff, one of the founders of Montefiore, in 1909, he suggested that they move to the far reaches of the city. And they began to purchase 162 lots in this area for the new Montefiore Tuberculosis Sanatorium. On November 13th, 1913, this building opened up. And as you see, by the way, you have the balconies on the top. That is obvious for the use of the patients to breathe in the air of the farming area around here in the suburban little village. There are old photographs from the period that show this building in existence, and there's nothing else around. Absolutely nothing. All right. The original building had a synagogue and 2 kitchens, one for meat and one for dairy products, because according to kosher laws, you cannot mix meat and dairy. There was ample room provided for expansion, and you see they used it. They're all over the place. After World War II, it became a general hospital. I guess because you had a lot of generals. But this hospital has several distinctions. In 1955, Dr. Seymour Furman, who died only a couple of months ago, performed the first successful implantation of a heart pacemaker into a human being. 55. That happened right here in Montefiore Hospital. And of course, the most recent, in 2004, you had the separation of Siamese twins joined by the head under a new system, gradually doing it. And that actually happened in that area where you have the green glass. That's a state-of-the-art children's hospital that was built only a few years ago. Now, Montefiore Hospital today is the largest single employer in the Bronx. And indeed, if you categorize the type of employment that is around, the single largest group of employers are in the healthcare industry. And you might think that the Bronx has a rather sick economy.
Larger than the Einstein complex?
Yeah, it's larger than the Einstein complex in the sense of all the buildings, but the buildings are much more compact. Einstein, they're a little bit more spread out.